When life stops making sense. The existential void of modern man. The silence of meaning. There comes a moment when the noise of the world falls silent, not because there is no sound, but because there is no meaning. We live surrounded by information, connected to everyone, yet estranged from ourselves. Modern man, despite his scientific and technological conquests, has become a foreigner within his own soul. He moves faster, communicates instantly, but no longer knows why. Viktor Frankl, Viennese psychiatrist and survivor of the Nazi concentration camps, foresaw this abyss. He called it the existential vacuum, an inner space where the search for meaning once lived, and where now echo only boredom, exhaustion, and indifference. Modern society teaches man to pursue pleasure, success, and power, but not meaning. And when pleasure becomes routine, success becomes hollow, and power fails to satisfy, man discovers that he has built a life without ground beneath it. The void, disguised as fulfillment. Frankl observed that the tragedy of the 20th century was not only war, but the loss of man's ability to suffer for something worthwhile. Today, that tragedy repeats itself, not in trenches, but on social media, in offices, in silent homes where the soul screams without being heard. Modern man is entertained but unfulfilled. He lives distracted from the essential, anesthetized by consumption, speed, and comparison. He believes freedom means doing anything, yet learns too late that freedom without direction is vertigo. Frankl wrote, "Man should not ask what the meaning of life is, but rather realize that it is he who is being asked." And here lies the turning point. Life is not a riddle to be solved, but a call to be answered. Yet modern man fears this question. He flees from it into addictions, distractions, fleeting romances, and temporary causes. Everything, so as not to face the mirror of his own emptiness. The psychology of emptiness. In Man's Search for Meaning, Frankl describes the condition of the man who has lost his compass. He does not suffer from lack of pleasure, but from lack of purpose. He wakes, works, sleeps, repeats, until one day he realizes the wheel turns, but takes him nowhere. This feeling, often called a crisis of meaning, is among the deepest forms of human suffering. It cannot be healed with distraction, only with encounter, the rediscovery of something or someone that transcends the ego. Frankl proposed a radical inversion. While Freud saw man driven by pleasure and Adler by power, Frankl saw man driven by meaning. And when this search is frustrated, man falls into what Frankl called noogenic neurosis, a neurosis of existential, not biological, origin. It is not the body that falls ill first, it is the soul that goes silent. The man who lost his why. Frankl often quoted Nietzsche, "He who has a why to live can bear almost any how." In the concentration camps, he witnessed this truth incarnate. Those who survived spiritually were not the strongest, but those who still had a sense of meaning, a love to return to, a work to complete, a faith to preserve. Today, the concentration camp is invisible. It is called routine without purpose. It is called comfort without transcendence. It is called a life full of choices and empty of meaning. Modern man lives under the illusion that happiness equals pleasure. Yet pleasure is a byproduct, not a goal. Happiness, Frankl argued, is the consequence of a life directed by meaning, and suffering, when inevitable, can become the soil where that meaning grows. Meaning in inevitable suffering. In Auschwitz, Frankl lost everything: his parents, his wife, his freedom. But he discovered there was one thing no one could take from him: the attitude he chose toward his suffering. Everything can be taken from a man but one thing, the last of human freedoms: to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances. This is the essence of logotherapy, the therapy of meaning. It does not seek to eliminate pain, but to find a why for which to live, even within it. Frankl saw prisoners die soon after losing hope. When man ceases to believe there is something to live for, he dies inwardly long before his body does. And how many today are living that same silent collapse? How many have already given up inside, though they still walk the streets, post pictures, meet deadlines? Elegant nihilism. The modern void is refined, aesthetic, well-dressed. Today's nihilism does not scream. It smiles. It lives in advertisements that promise instant happiness, in ideologies that reduce the individual to a statistic, in spiritualities that exchange transcendence for self-help. Frankl called this disguised nihilism, the subtle denial that life has an ultimate purpose. Man without God tries to fill the space left by the divine with human projects, yet everything he creates is temporary. And when man becomes his own center, he also becomes his own limit. The call to responsibility. For Frankl, meaning and responsibility are inseparable. To seek meaning is to accept that there is something to fulfill, a task only we can accomplish, a path that demands our personal response. To be responsible is to be able to respond. And that response gives dignity to existence. Meaning is not found in theories, but in engagement with reality, in loving someone, dedicating oneself to a cause, or facing unavoidable suffering with courage. Modern man, in fleeing pain, also flees spiritual maturity. But he who does not learn to suffer for something worthwhile will suffer for nothing. The search begins again. Emptiness is not the end, it is the call. When life stops making sense, it is asking whether there is still something within us willing to answer. Frankl believed that meaning is always possible, even in the most extreme conditions. It is not given by society, imposed by religion, or fabricated by the ego. It is discovered like a treasure hidden within the ruins of human experience. Logotherapy proposes 3 paths to rediscover meaning. Creative, to do something with love and purpose. Experiential, to love someone, to experience beauty or transcendence. Attitudinal, to transform inevitable suffering into growth. These 3 paths do not promise quick relief, but reconciliation with the mystery of existence. Man before the infinite. Frankl saw the search for meaning as a bridge between the human and the transcendent. Man is the only being capable of asking, why? And this question is the greatest proof of his dignity. The ultimate meaning, he said, cannot be grasped by reason alone, but through spiritual awareness, that inner perception that senses the value of life even when logic fails. It is what allows man to stand before the absurd and affirm, even without understanding everything, I choose to live with purpose. When life stops making sense. Perhaps life has not truly lost its meaning. It merely demands a new one. Emptiness can be the beginning of listening. Pain can be the beginning of sight, and despair the beginning of faith. Viktor Frankl does not invite us to naive optimism, but to tragic hope, the kind that grows amid ruins and still chooses to bloom. Even in the face of a tragic fate, life has an unconditional meaning. Modern man does not need more comfort. He needs courage. The courage to ask again, why am I alive? And to live as if the answer matters.